So I'm going to start actually with a story, and this is actually a fun presentation for me because it overlaps some of my work interests in sustainability and my personal interests. The photo you're seeing is from my house. It's the northern side of my house, and these plants are fed entirely by our bath shower water and our laundry water. And so in 2014, I went to Albuquerque, New Mexico to attend a water management group training for becoming a water harvesting practitioner. And at that training, we installed a retrofit in a household that put in a gravity-fed branch drain gray water system. And I got so excited about the simplicity of that system and the possibility as I was currently in the process with my husband designing our own home. And we also put in a laundry to landscape system, which uses the pressure of the laundry pump to put in a broader emitter drip system in a landscape as well. So that's what we did in Albuquerque. And I returned to Utah, really excited to install gray water in my household, and reviewed the code and realized the code was very complicated. So the code at the time required a pump, tank, engineered plans, and a lot of steps to install a residential gray water system that was extremely expensive. The system we installed in Albuquerque involved rain shields, which are very inexpensive, 2-inch pipe, and a 3-way valve that costs around $60, where you can switch the valve from landscape to sewer. So a very simple system. And when I realized how complicated Utah's system was, I looked up how many people had actually registered their gray water systems, and there was not a single legal residential gray water system in the state of Utah. And I knew many of my friends and other people in the community, at least in Moab where I live, had installed gray water systems. So there was a disconnect between practice and code. And I went to the health department and said, look, you know as well as I do, there's many gray water systems in the county and the state when you consider that not a single one is registered, and that tells me that something's wrong with the code. And New Mexico and Arizona's codes are more a best management practice when it comes to gray water systems. So conduct these best management practices and you can install your gray water system at the household. And actually the current gray water system in Utah is a little more regimented than those, but it was great to see some great examples surrounding Utah that allowed and were more user-friendly for people to install these systems at the household level. So we saw in today's presentations that the 2020 year, not only were we dealing with the pandemic and the unknowns of this virus that was spreading and shutdowns across the country, but it was an extreme drought condition. Well, one thing that helps my PTSD thinking about 2020 is that in the height of all that stress, the state of Utah adopted our revised gray water policy with zero public ascension and full support in revising the state code to allow for simple gravity-fed systems that involve a branch drain system. So I'll explain that in today's presentation in the brief time we have together. And here we go. So my goal for the presentation is to describe the potential of gray water as a form of resilience when it comes to the climate change impacts before us, and how my gray water system actually functions at my house. So 3 objectives for the next brief time together. One is to recognize major updates to Utah's revised gray water policy. And I give the Utah or the Grand County Health Department, Southeast Utah Health Department, a lot of thanks for this process. Orion Rogers was great dealing with me. I was very stubborn in wanting to put in a gravity-fed system in my household, and that the state policy didn't make a lot of sense to me as it was currently written. And he allowed a pilot system at my house so they could see how this actually functions, what I was talking about. And from that pilot system, rewrote the code and got that passed in 2020. And so we'll observe how my pilot system works and other pilot systems now in the Moab area that have been approved to adhere to this new policy, and also develop basic skills in implementing your own gray water system should you wish to do this in the future. It's very simple. But let me start with a question for you all. On average, what is the highest user of water in the home? So by fixture type. So I want you to think about this question. And as you think about it, I'm going to come back to you and poll you in a few minutes, but first let's get straight on our definitions, starting with gray water. What is gray water? So the Utah Office of Administrative Rules defines gray water as wastewater from bathtubs, showers, bathroom wash basins, clothes washing machines, or laundry tubs. Gray water does not include wastewater from toilets, kitchen sinks, photolab sinks, dishwashers, water softeners, garage door floor drains, or other sources that pose a public health hazard. So just to be clear, I don't like using the term wastewater because there's so much potential of reusing our household water, but that's the term that we're going to use for gray water. So clear water is solid free wastewater, and this includes water that is harvested or potentially harvested from the faucet when we're heating up the faucet, from drip, from compressors, or swamp cooler use, etc. So the sweat from air conditioning is another example of clear water. Huge potential for harvesting that we also aren't taking great advantage of in the state. For being the second driest state in the nation and all the water concerns we have in our state, it shouldn't be so difficult or unknown, these great alternatives to conserve water at the household level, like gray water and clear water reuse. So black water is obviously toilet and kitchen sink water in the state of Utah is considered black water. In other states, kitchen sink water is defined as dark brown, and some other states have even more liberal definitions of kitchen sink water. But in the state of Utah, kitchen sink water is considered black water, and dishwasher water as well, from the E. coli potential with that. There's some wonky formatting, I'll just warn you, of transitioning from my Mac to this computer that Aaron was so helpfully trying to work through with me, but we'll just deal with it. So stormwater is rainwater that falls or snow that melts and runs off the streets and lawns and other sites and into storm drains. And so the stormwater is connected to all sorts of problems, including downstream flooding, stream bank erosions, increased turbidity, habitat destruction, combined storm and sanitary sewer system overflows, infrastructure damage, and contaminated streams, et cetera. This is from the US EPA. I'll talk about integrated green water or green infrastructure systems like curb cuts and indented basins another day, but that's a great option for helping to mitigate stormwater impacts. And then rainwater obviously is the water that actually first hits your landscape or anywhere. And so this definition is actually really helpful for me as I think through the importance of thinking about water conservation and reuse in the household. It's a great synopsis of why we need to rethink our water relationship and why this is important. So I won't read this because you can read it on the screen, but let me come back to my question about indoor water use as you're contemplating this quote on the slide. So how many thought dishwasher was the top? We're going to do rapid fire, hands in the air. Not a single person in the audience. All right, I can't fool anyone. Bath is the highest. Okay, so a couple hands for bath. Good job. How about leaks? Leaks and pipes in the household. Okay, clothes washer. Oh yeah, okay, so several of you think clothes washer. Shower. So shower's close with bath, and some people have them separated. So several hands for shower. If we combine the two, then we'd have even more people because a few people said bath. Faucets, so that's kitchen sink, bathroom sink are combined in the image that I'm going to show. Okay, so a couple people say faucets. And then toilet. Anyone? Okay, so a handful of people say toilet. And in fact, many of us have inefficient toilets, and you're correct, toilet is the top water user in the household, but we can't consider toilet when it comes to gray water systems because it's black water. But if we combine that bath and shower, like many of you had your hands up, that's actually the second highest in the household. And so combined, it's 23% or over 31 gallons per household per day. So there's a huge potential when it comes to using this water more efficiently. So that's combining those two. Okay, so let me first talk about why gray water, and I'll show you some pictures following that. So here's some pictures actually of me harvesting my gray water system in the north side of my house, and I use that as fertilizer around the plants in my back side of my house when I need to. It so efficiently breaks down the mulch in my gray water basins that I harvest that every couple of years and use that as fertilizer for other plants in my yard. Gray water use results, and this is from research from the Watershed Management Group in Tucson, Arizona, results in effective water treatment. And so gray water is treated in the uppermost biologically active region of the soil, reduced use of ground and surface water resources for landscape irrigation, reduce use of energy and chemicals for water and wastewater treatment, improve plant growth, reclamation of nutrients. And there's two more things that I want to share with you for gray water: increased awareness of natural cycles and personal water use, and landscape irrigation source in preparation for potential future drought irrigation restrictions. So a great alternative as we think about watering our plants in our landscape in the face of drought restrictions. So what changed with the code? So mainly the code now involves tier 1 and tier 2 systems. Tier 1 are all residences. Tier 2 are more large scale businesses in the state. And I know of one tier 2 system being proposed in the Grand Staircase Escalante area currently. So first of all, health departments across the state can opt in to allowing for gray water systems. If you're interested in this topic, I highly encourage you to ask your local health department if they are opted in to approve gray water systems, and if not, maybe encourage them to do so. 3 are currently opted in the state. Thankfully, Grand County is one. So tier 1 is for allowing for gravity-fed gray water systems without a surge tank, pretreatment, or pressurized components, intended to be simple to operate and can be easily disconnected during the winter months or other periods. Disconnected meaning you turn that 3-way valve to sewer. I actually didn't turn my valve the last 2 years, which Orion rolled his eyes at, but he's now thankful for, because I found out that in Moab, at least, you can actually go all through the winter without having to turn your system off, and it works just fine. And so you can turn it off if you need to, though. Let's say you're using heavy bleach for some reason, you can turn it to your sewer instead. And it's also appropriate for retrofitting the tier 1. Tier 2 is multifamily or commercial and employs a surge tank pretreatment. So this is more complicated because it's larger scale, the business scope. So drip line irrigation system or pressurized components. So this is considerations under tier 2. And so that's a major update to the newest code that now exists for gray water. Let's talk about some design considerations. And again, I'm sorry about the formatting translation issues here. So this picture that we see is a picture of a branch drain dropping into a basin. And so some considerations from this page, and this is included in the code, is to size your basins based on your discharge amount, like number of bedrooms in the household, fixtures, and the texture of your soils. So whether it's sand, clay, or loam soils. And then also some considerations of what to include for your depth cover: 6 inches of cover. That's from the bottom of your mulch shield to the surface should be about 6 inches that you have that's covered. And obviously you don't want pooling of that water as well for public health concerns. So best management practices: definitely no human contact, ponding, runoff, spraying. You don't want to be spraying your gray water around your landscape. Contact with edible portions of plants and biologically or chemically hazardous materials. I'm growing 2 cherry trees in my gray water basin, and a nectarine and a peach, and currants, lavender, and a range of wildflowers that are thriving just off of my household water. Some other design considerations is to think about integrated design. So integrating this with other parts of your landscape, and your elevations and grading, of course, which are all specified in the code. Your water sources, so how many fixtures you want to pull from. I didn't pull from my bathroom sink. This was pre-children when I put this system in, not thinking I was going to have children. And now that I have children, I wish I pulled from my bathroom sink as well. We didn't originally because we're very water conscious and thought it would be too high of a salt load. But now with our kids, even though we do our best, they love to run that water. And I wish it was going out to my landscape. So, and also think about your plant water needs. So your water budget of your plants that you're planting. And there's some discussion in the code about that as well. So here's the anatomy of a branch drain system. So you've got your source, which is from the household, and then your 3-way valve. And so mine's right beside my washing machine in my house. I can turn it either way. And then your pipes and your fittings, flow splitters, as you're splitting that pipe into 2 different directions. Your discharge area, which is your basin that's indented, and your mulch shield, your mulch, and your vegetation. So these are all things to think about when you are putting in a gray water system. Here's a picture of that Jandy valve and some creative options people have put in for switching from sewer to their landscape. This top picture with the earth and floor there, and the mulch shield inside the house is actually my house as it was being built. And that's now right beside my washing machine. Here's a flow splitter. That cap is to allow me to get in there and clean out hair and other debris that might, because where you have a flow splitter is where it's most likely to block water flow. And so you need to be able to access those for cleaning and maintenance. And then you can see there, that's my branch drain system as it was going in. This is in 2015. And we'll see how big the trees have gotten. Here's another residence, straw bale earth and plaster home in Moab. Moab actually has more straw bale homes per capita than the entire US. And so this is a branch drain system in the backyard of the straw bale home that you can see the mulch shields, indented basins, similar themes, and the access to the flow splitter there with a smaller mulch shield. There it is covered with mulch, so you can't even see the systems in place. And here's an outlet example into a mulch shield. Because mine was the first pilot and experimental design, we first were using these smaller mulch shields and realized that the larger mulch shields are much better for long-term use and less maintenance over time. Please ignore the bindweed growing around my mulch shield. I do garden, just before that picture. So this is various levels of a gray water system. So you have your basin, your bench where you plant more water dependent plants. I don't plant a lot directly in the basin to allow the root systems of the bench area to get into that basin and share that water use in the basin itself. And then you have the upland, which is more drought tolerant plants. This is what I recommend planting there. Here's my north side of my house, which is entirely gray water fed. Again, you see the front tree is a peach and then the Utah giant cherries behind that. And then so for operations and maintenance, you want to ensure to inspect your pipes and definitely maintain that over time and switch out your mulch every couple of years because it'll break down very efficiently. And it's great fertilizer. I won't go in depth just for time. Here's some other pictures of that front yard. This is looking at the Lappin's cherry. We're looking west in this photo and various flowers and all the volunteer sunflowers that have come up. This is it standing in the middle between the two gray water basins of my household, looking west again. And here's a picture of the whole front of the house with the gray water system. And again, that photo of the plants thriving. To make this very simple for people to understand, Kelly Cope, myself, and Jeremy Lynch, who was my intern at the time, co-authored a fact sheet on gray water systems. Orion, who is now a close friend of mine, and Jeff Adams of Terra Sophia edited this and revised it with a new code. And so that's the most recent fact sheet now on gray water. We have term definitions, what the code means, and other details in there. So that was a real rapid fire photo tour of my system, but hopefully now you're a little bit more familiar that Utah has a new gray water policy and what that policy entails, the major aspects of that. We explored a couple system examples and then also how to implement this at the household level, what that looks like. So here's the last picture of my gray water system, and I'll just end with that with a couple minutes left for questions.